Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. I hope you are all doing well and you're ready to talk about claiming for prolongation costs. Before we get started, I will quickly give a very quick introduction of the ICCP. Okay, so who is the ICCP? Who are we and what do we do? Well, very simply, we are a professional members organization that recognizes those with the skills, qualifications, and expertise in the professional management of construction claims. So our three main objectives are to establish international professional standards, to give recognition to those who have gained that knowledge and experience and are working at that professional standard level, and to also help and educate those who wish to gain that experience in the management of claims. Okay, so why is there a need for the ICCP when there are so many other construction organizations? Well, very simply, construction claims have become a key part of the international construction industry. And claims professionals come from many different construction backgrounds, from quantity surveying, engineering, project management, even lawyers, and they deserve recognition for the skills and expertise they have worked toward. And until the ICCP was established, there was no institute that specifically recognized those who have the specialist knowledge, experience, and skills to manage, prepare, and respond to claims to the highest levels of professionalism. Okay, so I'll quickly introduce you to the steering committee, which I have not changed. I'm very sorry. We had an election last week, so Christian Hroskop and Mark Watson are no longer on the steering committee. But I will just point out that we do have an elected president and 3 elected fellows who serve on the steering committee. And Nina is our general manager. She's currently on maternity leave. Okay, and in terms of membership, we have 3 levels of regular individual membership. And as with most organizations, each of those have their own set of criteria that need to be met. We also have a student and graduate membership for those who are in their working towards their first qualification or have just graduated and are looking to work in the field of claims. We also have corporate membership for companies that specialize in claims or that have departments that specialize in construction claims. Okay, and what is in it for the members? Why should you join? Well, we have our website has a private members area, which has a knowledge bank of articles, case studies, white papers, etc., that are collected to be easily found in one place. We have information about various higher education and training opportunities available, again, collected in one place. Our bookshop does not sell books, but it does review the latest industry releases. We have a library of practical templates, which allows our members to both save time and ensure that their claims are completed to the highest standard. We have regular CPD sessions such as this one. So this is open to the public, but the CPD hours are a benefit of membership. We also have private sessions only for members, the ICCP Academy, which are shorter, more technical sessions. We have discounts on books from Wiley, Blackwell, and Rutledge, as well as from our training partner claims class. We have a monthly newsletter to keep our members up to date on the latest in the industry. We offer industry exposure in the form of a public listing of members. Members are also given a certificate of membership and logos that they can use. We have a private LinkedIn group for members to discuss their contracts and claims questions in a confidential setting. And we have the optional benefit of the Register of Claims Practitioners, most popular with our members who are consultants. And that allows them to increase their online profile. Okay, and I realize that was fairly quick. So if you would like to learn more, please contact me, jennifer.smith@instituteccp.com, or go to our website, instituteccp.com. And if you requested additional information when you registered for this session, you will be receiving an email from me with some additional information. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Andy Hewitt, and he will be answering, beginning with the questions that we received in advance. And time allowing, he will answer questions that are put into the Q&A box. And I can see we've already got the first question in the Q&A box, so I'll stop talking. Take it away, Andy.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for the introduction, Jen. Just to follow on before we get into the questions, Jen's given you an overview of the ICCP. I know on these sessions we get many people joining who are not members, but I really would encourage you, if you are dealing with claims on a regular basis, or if you're a specialist in claims, or you just happen to be the person on the project who the project manager says, oh, we need a claim putting together, you're the person, you'll get such a lot of benefits from becoming a member of the ICCP. We're a small, friendly organisation. We try to help our members out individually, unlike the larger institutes which may remain nameless, but are more interested in making money off the members. We really do give a lot to our members, and because we're small, it can often be on a personal basis. So please, okay, this is a free webinar, we're giving free information out, but just have a look, go to the website, chat to Jen, and really consider whether the quite reasonable subscriptions would be worth you investing in as a claims person. And one thing that Jen didn't mention is the fact that depending on where you are in the world, we do recognize that in certain parts of the world, certain countries, salaries aren't as high as they are in other parts of the world. So we do give concessionary fees to qualify people, members from qualifying countries, because we want to help everybody all over the world in developing countries as well as the more established countries. So we try and encourage people who are maybe don't have the education and training at home to be able to reach out to us and get the benefits of becoming a member. So please do have a look at the website and seriously consider whether membership would benefit you. I think it would. All our members like what we do, so there we go. The first one is from, apologies if I get the name right, but Boban Djorovic, I think. And the question is Emden, Hudson, etc. the correct approach for the quantification of head office overheads? Or should you recommend, or could you recommend some different approach? Well, yes, Bob Dan, Emden's, Etchley's, Hudson, they are all established formulas for the calculation. And for those that you don't, you that don't perhaps realize what these formulas are, it's a set way of calculating the head office overheads and profit, which you would include in any claim for prolongation costs. And these formulas are well established in the industry. They're accepted by arbitrators, they're accepted by the courts. So, they're a very, very acceptable way of calculating your head office overheads to include in your prolongation cost claim. And a little bit of a handy hint here, the Society of Construction Law publish on their website, and it's available as a free download, a Excel calculator, whereby if you put the required criteria, which is generally company turnover for the past 3 years or so, or if it doesn't go that, you need to average it for the past 3 years. So the company turnover, the company profit, the period of the project, the period of the extension of time, and some more criteria. You just enter that data into the spreadsheet, and the calculator will calculate the head office and overheads, head office overhead costs in the three different prescribed or accepted formulas, which are basically Emden's, Hudson's, and Exley's. So if you include that within your claim, and I think a very good way of doing it is to include the calculation, the three calculations. And what I like to do is say, look, we've calculated it all three ways. We're actually claiming for the lowest amount. That really goes a long way to demonstrating to the reviewer of your claim, the respondent, that, you know, you're not being greedy, you're not going for every single dollar, but you are being reasonable about your claim. And no one can really argue with that way of calculating your head office overheads and profits because it is so well established. So I hope that helps, Bobden. Well, we've got a couple of questions from, and again, I'm struggling with the pronunciation, Wimalaratne Gamlath. The first one, well, actually, the first one's in two parts, so let me go through it step by step. We're talking about FIDIC 99. I'm assuming the red book, although I think the yellow book is pretty much the same. And the question is, clause 13 variations. There are two types of variations mentioned in clause 13, namely by an instruction. So the engineer instructs you to build to these revised drawings, to do something different to the original scope, or by a request from a proposal for the contractor. So this is where the engineer says, we're thinking about doing this. Could you give us a proposal? Now, first thing to remember here is FIDIC doesn't actually ask for a quotation. It asks you, the contractor, to give a proposal for the evaluation of the variation. So we're not looking for a quoted price at this point. But going on, if the engineer has asked for a proposal, the contractor can include all his costs plus prolongation costs, if any, in his proposal and submit to the engineer for approval. Now, what I'd be doing here is saying that we'd value the variation at the contract rates and prices through measurement, but because this variation is going to extend the time for completion, I would also be looking to reclaim my prolongation costs for the length of time that the extension of time warrants. So going on, what about if the engineer has provided a direct instruction for any additional works similar to the existing items in the bill of quantities? So yes, we can evaluate the changed or extra work through measurement and evaluation at the contract rate and prices, which means that the variation will be paid based on the contract bill of quantities rates. At the same time, the contractor is entitled to an extension of time. As per subclause 8.4, which deals with extension of time. But subclause 8.4 does not provide any costs. How can the contractor claim for his associated prolongation costs? Under which clause, however, the contract bill of quantities rates include his overheads and profit, and the contractor argues that the amount covered is insufficient for the extended period. Now, Wimalaratne, you've actually hit upon what I think is a failing in FIDIC 1999. And just let's go back. As the contractor, we get an instruction to carry out a variation. The variation is either for a significant amount of extra work, which will need more time, and that will affect the completion date, or maybe it's not for a lot of work, but the instruction is issued towards the end of the project, and even though it's not a lot of work, it will again affect the time for completion. So we've got three things here. Firstly, we've got the changed work, which we can measure and evaluate at the contract rates and prices. Easy enough, just a quantity surveying exercise. We've got our extension of time, which we will need to demonstrate by some form of delay analysis, which will extend the time for completion, and thus incur the contractor in increased site overheads for his establishment, the fact that he's got to keep his management and administration staff, his site compound, his time-related plant, etc., and head office overheads for the period of the extension of time. But FIDIC doesn't say specifically anyway that you can have prolongation costs. It says, yes, you can have an extension of time under clause 8.4. It says that variations will be measured and evaluated at the contract rates and prices. And as the Wimalatra, the gentleman, my apologies, as correctly pointed out, there is no particular hook to hang your prolongation costs off. So there, I think this is a weakness in FIDIC 99. So we've got to look elsewhere in the contract to find our entitlement to the prolongation costs. And this comes in clause 20.1, which says, and this is not an exact quote, if the contractor considers himself entitled to an extension of time or additional payment, he may submit a claim. And I think this is a fairly sound way of claiming for your prolongation costs. And you would need to include within your claim a section on the entitlement to demonstrate to the respondent that this is a cost that you are entitled to claim for. So well done for spotting the weakness in FIDIC, and this is how I would get out of it. Let me just check that I've covered everything there. Yes, I think we would. And, you know, Wimalatra, I'm sorry, again, has mentioned that the overheads and profit percentage on the rates will not compensate sufficiently for the prolongation cost. So that's the way to do it. Second part of this question, FIDIC 99 subclause 4.2 performance security. This is the clause that requires the contractor to provide a security against performance, so that if the contractor doesn't perform or stops work or doesn't produce the project, the employer can claim from the provider of the security, usually a bank, for compensation. The subclause 4.2 says the contractor has to provide the performance security at his cost. That is correct. He needs to provide it, and he will incur a cost from the bank in arranging the facility. This means such costs should not be part of the accepted contract amount. That is incorrect. When it's saying that it's at the contractor's cost, well, the contractor needs to include whatever costs, just the same as he would have to do for any other guarantees, retention guarantees, insurances, etc., within the contract price. Where are we? Is this correct? Well, no, it's not. If the answer is no, why FIDIC has mentioned it? Well, I think they're just underlining that it's a requirement for the contractor to provide the performance security, and he has to pay for any costs incurred in providing. As I say, just the same as he has to pay for insurance costs, etc. The contractor has included such costs in his overhead component and claimed as a reasonable cost in his prolongation costs. Is this correct? Now, partly. The contractor, let's say we've got a 2-year contract. The contractor is obliged to provide a 2-year contract, a performance security for the length of the time of the contract. It will actually be the 2 years plus the defects notification period. So he will incur a cost for providing it, let's just say, for 24 months. If an extension of time increases it for 25 months, well, the contractor will have to arrange the performance security to be extended for that additional month. And that would cost him an additional fee with his bank. Or it could well be that the cost will be just carried on at the same cost. But yes, that is a definite head of claim within your prolongation costs. In the same way as you maybe have to increase the period and incur more fees in the insurances that you must provide for the project, 25 months instead of 24 months, your retention guarantee, your advance payment guarantee. So anything that is directly related to time that costs you additional money because of the extension of time is a legitimate head of claim under performance costs. So good questions there. Thank you very much. And now we're going on to the second question, or maybe it's the third or the fourth, from Wimal Ratney. Can the contractor quote 2 or more subclauses in his claim notice to provide his entitlement of extension of time and prolongation costs? I would say in any claim, and there are some examples of FIDIC will give entitlement under more than one clause. It can only strengthen your claim if you quote 2 clauses. And a good example of this, we have under FIDIC Clause 1.9, delayed drawings or instructions. If the contractor is delayed because he's waiting for, let's say, the drawings, or let's say an instruction to make a nomination to a nominated subcontractor, and that entitles him to an extension of time, that's the main clause that FIDIC says you can have extension of time and reclaim your costs. But if we also look at 8.4, which is the extension of time claim, the contract allows for an extension of time due to any delay, impediment, or something else caused by the employer or the employer's agents. Now, if the engineer is late issuing the drawings, we could consider that is another reason why we can have an extension of time, because the engineer, who is the employer's agent, has delayed the matter. He's caused delay, impediment, or the other thing. So yes, I would definitely quote all clauses that are relevant to the circumstances and to the event. It will make your claim stronger. Right, and we get an example here. The engineer has instructed new work at a late stage in the contract, and the contractor is claiming an extension of time under subclause 1.9, delayed drawings instructions, and subclause 13, variations and adjustments. Which clause will be applicable? Well, I'm sorry, but you've got both of these clauses wrong. Subclause 1.9, delayed drawings and instructions, is not where new work has been instructed at a late point. It is related to the original scope of works. So if we don't get the issued for construction drawings, we don't get a response to a request for information, we don't get a nomination of an important subcontractor, and that delays the time for completion. Clause 1.9 gives entitlement to an extension of time. Now, if the drawings comprise of a variation, that is not a late drawing or instruction. That is a variation. So we have to look at the clause that provides us entitlement to claim an extension of time. And if we look at 8.4, which is the extension of time claim, that says that if a variation is instructed and that delays the time for completion, we are entitled to extension of time. And you've also mentioned subclause 13, variations and adjustments. There's no specific entitlement under subclause 13 to an extension of time in relation to variations. Again, we need to go to 8.4, which says you can have an extension of time if a variation delays the time for completion. So I hope that clarifies things. And there's one lesson to be learned from this. When you are composing your claim, you must be very, very clear and very, very accurate on using the correct or identifying the correct clauses to demonstrate your entitlement. And if I was the respondent and you claimed for this under the 2 clauses that you've mentioned here, subclause 1.9, well, it's not delayed drawings or instructions, it's a variation. And subclause 13, where there's no entitlement in subclause 13 to an extension of time, I would be, well, probably, because I'm a nice engineer and I like to be fair, I would probably still award the extension of time, but I would need to justify to the employer that I would be awarding it under clause 8.5, even though the contractor hasn't cited it. But it's much better as a contractor to get it right in the first place, isn't it? So we go on. Can the engineer reject the notice due to multiple subclauses because subclause 20.1 says, under any clause of these conditions, the behavior of two subclauses are also different. One will provide time and cost. The other one will provide time only. I'm not quite sure here. Firstly, an engineer, unless a notice is factually incorrect, cannot reject a notice. A notice is an obligation under FIDIC that you must provide notices, particularly notices of claim, under certain circumstances. So the engineer can't say your notice is rejected when FIDIC requires you as a contractor to submit that notice. What he can do is record that he doesn't agree with the facts on the notice. So if you were to say that under subclause 20.1, we hereby notify you that we consider ourselves entitled to an extension of time or payment for this or that, and quote the wrong clause, for example, subclause 1.9, delayed drawings and instructions, well, I think if I were the engineer, I would say, thanks for your notice, but you have used the wrong clause. Clause 1.9 does not entitle you to claim an extension of time because of a variation, and just get that recorded. But, you know, entitlement does rest within the contract. If you quoted the wrong clause, it's not very professional. It's probably going to delay the settlement of your claim. It might, with an aggressive engineer, just result in your claim being rejected because you haven't proved entitlement because you've quoted the wrong clause. A decent engineer would go back and say, look, it should be clause 8.4. So do you want to resubmit it or amend it or whatever?
Sorry. The next question from Dhruba from Kathmandu, Nepal. As to the FIDIC contract, claims are time variant. Is it worth arguing to deny realistic claims on account of late submission?
Sorry, does that mention FIDIC?
Yes.
Okay, so FIDIC, you cannot reject a claim because it was submitted after the 42 days that FIDIC stipulates. It's an obligation of the contractor to submit a claim within 42 days of the event. But there is it's not like a notice of claim, which will result in, if you don't submit your notice within 28 days, the respondent has the right to, if you like, reject your claim. But the late submission of the claim itself is not a reason to reject. What FIDIC says, if the late submission has caused the engineer not to be able to investigate a matter or has compromise the engineer's position in any way, he may take account of that when he performs his review. And again, this is not an actual quote, it's just the sense of what FIDIC says. So I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Giri. What is the difference between exceptional events and force majeure in relation to the eligibility for extension of time and compensation? I feel like probably the first 20 construction clinics we did were very heavily focused on this. But Andy, if you could give a brief little answer.
Right. Firstly, it is a little bit confusing in FIDIC because the sort of events which are covered under exceptional events and force majeure are very, very similar. You know, we've got war, we've got strikes, lockouts, nuclear explosion, atomic whatever, insurrection, usurping of power, etc., natural calamities, etc. So the causes for both clauses are very similar. But the exceptional events deals with where damage has occurred to the project, or either the works or the contractor's documents, etc. And it says if any of these things cause damage, the contractor is obliged to follow the instructions of the engineer and rectify that damage. Now, obviously, he will be the contractor will incur costs in doing so, and it could well delay the time for completion. So the exceptional events clause gives the contractor the eligibility to claim for an extension of time and reclaim his costs and possibly profit or possibly not profit. I'm not quite sure without looking it up. So that's exceptional events. It deals with damage that's been caused to the site through one of these listed type of events. Force majeure, however, is a similar type of event, all the stuff that I just talked about, which prevents either of the parties from performing their obligations. And this allows, it doesn't cover damage to the project, but let's say that a tsunami, and this actually happens in Japan, and the factory providing some sort of equipment to the site was damaged by the tsunami. So there's no damage to the project because it's just the factory producing, in this case, I think it was air conditioning units, but it's preventing them from producing them. They can't be shipped, they can't be incorporated into the project. The contractor then had to find another supplier. That all took time, that delayed the project. So the contractor was prevented from performing his obligations due to this natural catastrophe. Now, FIDIC will give you the right to an extension of time if that delayed the time for completion, and possibly, and there are some qualifications in the force majeure clause, allow you to claim for any additional costs. In this particular instance, the contractor wasn't allowed to claim for the additional cost, but he was allowed his extension of time. So there we go. That's the difference.
Clement asks, how can one relate delayed payments with extension of time and with costs using either FIDIC 99 or 2017?
There is no direct clause which allows the contractor to claim an extension of time because the payments were late. What you need to do is follow the procedure described in clause 16, which is suspension. If you don't, as a contractor, if you don't receive your payment on time, and if I were the contractor, the very next day after the payment should have been made, I would be instigating this procedure. You need to send a notice which says that the payment hasn't been received. We are giving you 21 days notice that if we don't receive the payment, we shall suspend the works or reduce the rate of works. Now, this is a big step, but at this point, when the payment is just late, it could be a wake-up because the guy in the employer's office with the rubber stamp has gone on holiday and it's just late. There's no real intention to pay late. But then if you still don't get the payment after 21 days as a contractor, you've got to make a decision. Do we just continue to with the works in the hope that we will get paid? Very risky. Do we suspend and demobilize all our resources? That's a big step. But my take on it, depending on the circumstances, is that if we don't take some action, we could just be digging a deeper and deeper hole and not getting paid, and at the same time providing what the employer is looking for, continuing the work. So certainly after the 21 days, I would be taking some sort of action. If you suspend the works or if you reduce the rate of works, and sometimes this is inevitable because even if the contractor wants to continue for his own reasons, the works, if he doesn't pay his suppliers, if he doesn't pay his subcontractors, he will probably find that these people won't deliver materials and goods, excuse me, and subcontractors won't come to site. So the works will be reduced anyway, even if the contractor is not intending to. But subclause 16 then allows an extension of time to be claimed for the extent that suspension or reduction of the rate of works has affected the completion date. But if the contractor continues not to receive payment, the next step is to terminate the contract. And, why wouldn't you if you're not getting paid? As I said earlier, you can just continue to try to play nice and try to be reasonable and just getting further and further into debt on this project. So certainly I will be sending my clause 16 notice. Excuse me. And certainly I will be taking some action after the 21 days, even if I don't fully suspend.
Okay, and he had a later follow-up. Does the answer you have just provided refer or include also delayed valuations?
I think you mean by that delayed certification. The engineer has an obligation to fairly certify payment within 28 days of receiving the contractor's statement. Well, if the engineer certifies late, that could cause the employer to pay late. So that sort of rolls on. There's no specific entitlement to claim for delayed certificates. But again, if we're managing a project, we have to look at the contract, but we also have to look at good management. And if on the day after I should have received my certificate, and this is where you need to have good contract administration systems on your project, I would be sending a notice, even though FIDIC doesn't require, dear Mr. Engineer, we should have received our payment certificate on this date. It is now this date +1. Please perform your obligations and issue your certificate without further delay. Probably phrased a little bit nicer than that, but it could well be that it's an administrative error from the engineer, or it could be that the engineer is totally incompetent. And in that case, because the notice is copied to the employer, well, if I were the employer, I would be wanting to know why my engineer, whose fees I'm paying, is putting me into a potential breach of contract situation. And I would be shouting at the engineer and saying, why is it late? Get it sorted out, because the project will suffer.
And it's in two parts. Is the employer obliged to pay the premium of professional indemnity insurance, part 1, in design and build contract, part 2, EPC contract?
The employer doesn't pay any professional indemnity. The consultants, whoever they are, if it's a design and build contract, it would be the contractor. But there again, sorry, I'm thinking aloud here. The contractor's got lots and lots of obligations and performance security and the rest of it. Professional indemnity would be probably something that the employer would insist on. If I were the employer, I would, from his other consultants. Maybe if under a red book, he's employing a consultant to provide the design, employing a consultant to act as the engineer, typically a project management consultant, employing a cost consultant to look after the money. And I would be wanting professional indemnity insurance from those consultants. If it was a design and build and I were the contractor and I was employing, which is usually the case, a design consultant to carry out the design, I, as the contractor, would be wanting to see professional indemnity insurance provided by my subcontract designer. We seem to have got off the subject of
as ever, yes. Okay, how about one final question if you have time? If in a dispute resolution, okay, let's see. If a dispute resolution took considerable time, in the meantime, the contractor suspended, awaiting the decision, and the contractor was wrong During the dispute resolution, the contractor incurred costs maintaining the site and idling costs. Who should bear the cost of it? Is that fair to the contractor to bear it?
Off the top of my head, I think you're confusing two things. If a dispute's been submitted for resolution to the dispute adjudication board, or maybe it's even in arbitration, although that would be unusual during the life of the project, that has to go through its process. The fact that the dispute's been submitted and it is undergoing resolution should not affect the contractor's progress or responsibilities. So the contractor should just continue as normal and isolate the dispute. The dispute will either come out in favor of the contractor or the employer, but the contractor still needs to carry out working whilst the process runs its course. So not quite sure where we're coming from there. We can't, as a contractor, to say, I'm suspending the work, or I'm slowing down the work, or I'm not doing this because the dispute is live. That is totally against the spirit and, I'm sure, the wording of the contract.
All right. I think with that, I will thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Andy, as ever, for your wisdom and knowledge. And let's see, one more. Oh, and someone has said thank you. You're welcome. All right. So thank you, Andy.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And just to remind everybody, once again, we give this information for free because we like to help people, but we would like people to actually think about joining us. So have a look at the website. I'm sure you will benefit a lot from becoming a member. And this is just an example of how nice and proactive and friendly we are. This is all informal. We're helping people. We're imparting wisdom, and we are there to help further. You wouldn't get that from the biggest institutes, or probably not in such a friendly manner. So thank you, Jen, and thanks to everybody who's taken part today.
Yep. Thank you all. Have a good day. Bye.